I'm Dana Denha, and you're watching FYI. March is Maple Sugar Month at Metro Parks throughout the area. During this time, learn the technique of getting sap from tree to table.
Hudson Mills Metro Park is home to the sugar bush. These trees, tapped yearly, produce some delectable maple syrup.
We are making maple sugar. We're tapping our maple trees. When I say tap, I don't mean we're tapping like a woodpecker, but we're putting a little hole in there and taking some of the sap out. And here at the evaporator, we're boiling it down into maple syrup.
We tapped the tree to get the maple out of it, and we got to taste it.
Deep-rooted in America's history is the tapping of maple trees.
Maple sugaring was started by our native people that were here before the Europeans got here. It was just a way of making food at that time of the year when your winter food stores were used up.
What I liked the most was learning about how the different tools have evolved through the years from when they first started doing this with the Native Americans up till now using more newer technology.
Back then, they would use a wooden trough to boil it down in. Throwing hot rocks into the liquid would cause it to boil. So it's kind of a rocks in, rocks out, and they would actually continue on until they had a dried sugar product at the very end. So they wouldn't store it as maple syrup, it would actually be a dry sugar. They're gonna kind of look at the history of it. They're gonna see how the natives made it, how the first settlers made it, and how we're doing it today.
With over 250 members of the community serving on boards, commissions, and committees, you too can have your voice heard through civic engagement. Learn how in this month's City Roundup in 60.
Hi, my name is Robert Malkai with the City of Ann Arbor Clerk's Office, here today to tell you about joining a board or commission. One of the best ways to engage with the city, advocate for positive change, and make your voice heard is to join a board or commission. With over 60 boards and commissions ranging from public art to human rights, we have boards and commissions for a wide range of policy interests. To learn more about our many boards and commissions, visit a2gov.legistar.com. Click on Boards and Commissions. Here, you can see all our boards, read a short description of them, and find contact information for each. Most boards have links that will take you to their webpage with more information. Those interested can click the Apply button in the top right corner. If you are interested in seeing current vacancies, under Boards and Commissions, click Vacancies. Here, you can see if any boards have an immediate opening and if the openings are for a specific position. Even if there is not a vacancy at the time, we'll leave your application on file for when a seat comes available. We look forward to seeing your application.
Many of us spend a big chunk of our work week in front of a screen. We can all relate to that neck ache, lower back, or wrist pain associated with too much sitting and computing. Instead of living with this discomfort, there are techniques available to promote health through posture. Joining me is Sara Eggleston, founder of Structured Health Resources. Welcome to the show, Sara.
Thank you, Dana. Pleasure to be here.
Sara, tell me a little bit about yourself. What got you into this business originally?
That's a great question. I started in the field working with people with disabilities, and I was actually a case manager helping people after they had a disability and they had removed themselves from work because of that limitations that they had. I discovered that so many of these individuals, if they had more awareness about ergonomics and posture, that they could have prevented these conditions. So I quickly moved not to the reactive, helping people after they had a disability, but trying to empower and help employers understand how important that training would be to help mitigate or educate individuals within the workplace to make better choices so they did not become disabled. So it just seemed like a natural fit to me. It happened to be a guest speaker in one of my master level courses that inspired me for this concept. So that's kind of what started it.
You talk about the disability aspect of it, because that was actually something I didn't really think about, because I've always thought, like, I have a cousin that's been wheelchair bound her whole life. And I was like, her wheelchair is comfortable, but it's because they're thinking about these things that it has to be comfortable for someone to sit in it all day long.
Well, if her wheelchair is custom fit. So I run into people often who don't have a custom fit wheelchair, and that's something I really enjoy doing. Not only sitting at work, but sitting in a wheelchair. We all have different anthropometrics, different proportions that make something fit or not fit us. So it really requires taking time to invest and try to figure out what your needs are based
That's
on what you're
something
fitting in.
that like insurance covers for people if they have a disability, or is that something that you sort of have to pay out of pocket for?
Oh, that's a great question. Sometimes often the insurance will just pay for you to get a wheelchair or a walker every, 4 to 5 years. Not necessarily the training on how to adjust it. So there's a funny story. A mentor of mine told me that he knew someone in the field of ergonomics, and she said when a chair arrived, don't adjust it. It's an ergonomic chair. Leave it the way it is. And that's exactly wrong, right? It's an ergonomic chair because it is adjustable, and you want to take time to adjust it to each of the user's different needs. So you're 5'3", I'm 5'7". We're going to need a different adjustment on our chair.
So you talk about, you were working with people with disabilities, but you sort of had this idea that you wanted to prevent these things from happening in the first place. I think that maybe a lot of times, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, that maybe people are feeling sort of these aches and pains and stuff at work and don't realize why it's happening.
That's very often the case, Dana, that it's hard sometimes to troubleshoot. Why is this happening? Is it because of my knitting? Is it because of my baseball? Is it for my bike riding? But what we do when we work with people is we first try to help them know kind of where that source might be coming from. And then we really make sure that we're looking at that specific symptom to make the necessary adjustments kind of to reduce any further aggravation to that symptom. But it's very exciting when you actually invest in yourself and take time. Like so often we're worried about our output, what we're doing in our job and what we have to get done for these deadlines, but we're not really thinking about how we're physically doing that in the space that we're assigned.
Well, I had an interesting thing happen to me in my own workplace, because I have a job where I do sit at my desk for part of the week, but then part of the week I'm up on ladders, I'm hanging lights over my head. So there's things that are happening. I'm carrying heavy equipment.
Yeah.
So, I realized at some point during work, I was having really bad backaches, and I was having to medicate because of it. And it's like, you shouldn't have to medicate on a daily basis for pain. So like taking Tylenol, ibuprofen, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So then it was one of those things where it was like, is it because I'm lifting stuff over my head? Is it because I'm carrying heavy stuff? And then it ended up being because I had a chair that was not proper for the way my body needed to sit at my desk, which is it was the last thing I probably would have thought about too, honestly, because I'm thinking about all these things, using your back, heavy things.
Right.
And it ended up really being because the depth of my chair seat was too wide for my legs, and my legs to touch the ground could not hit the back of that chair. And it was causing me a lot of pain.
And that's so common because, you put the trust in someone who's selecting these chairs, and they're trying to figure out what the right chair is for their 20 employees.
They're buying, they're buying the same chair for every single person.
Exactly. And there's certainly a difference in your stature than another colleague's, right? Whether they're larger, taller, there's so many different variables. So that is really a hard feat. And that's really one of the most challenging things, is that to find a product that's really designed, they talk about being designed for the 5th to the 95th individual. So they're always trying to design products to meet that group. But to have a product that actually adjusts to all the ranges that population needs is a very costly product. And it's the ones that can have that adjustable piece of furniture are very fortunate. So unfortunately, most often we're having to adapt our stature to the space that we're given. So maybe that big chair, the best thing you could have done if you couldn't have switched it out would be to put those lumbar pillows on the back of it. Now, these are just Band-Aids. This is not the ideal solution, but just something to consider for those people that might be watching. If you're just really uncomfortable in your chair, often just adding different pillows, again, these are quick solutions, but not necessarily the ideal solution.
I mean, honestly, if your work can't provide you with a chair that works for you, I would say tuck away a little money every paycheck and buy your own chair then. Because
Absolutely.
it is so important to have something that you feel comfortable sitting in when you're sitting in it for that many hours in a week.
And in our virtual world, this is more challenging. So on a personal note, I have 3 teens that are doing virtual school from home and have since last March. So we're at a year. And I know the industry. So I knew how to find a chair that I've sat in. It's really hard to buy a chair that you have not sat your bottom into, right? It's everybody's going to sit differently into the chair. So ideally we have a chance to test ride, just like you wouldn't buy a car without sitting in. I know some people do, but it's really helpful to be able to sit in the chair before you make that purchase.
So you actually have come up with some techniques where it's not about buying stuff per se. It's about actually the way you're using your body when you're sitting and using the computer.
Yes, and I would say, Dana, that is, I would say probably 80% of workplace comfort is based on choices we make and how we sit, but also taking time to invest in what feels best to our body. So the method that we've trademarked and been applying for like 20 some years is called mouse with your arm. And the concept is that if your arm that you use the mouse is supported by your chair armrest, and that chair armrest is in a comfortable position where it supports your arm with your elbow next to your side, so you're not having to reach your arm way out, or but it's a really comfortable armrest that supports your arm right below what they call a relaxed elbow height. And that is where, when you put your arm kind of at an L, where is that elbow when your shoulder's relaxed? That's relaxed elbow height. And you want your armrest to fit right under there. And that if people can use that armrest when you operate your mouse and understand some other application elements like how high is your desk and all these other elements, what it does is it helps you sit back in your chair. And what we found is when you do keep your elbow next to your side and use that armrest and are able to get that back support, it actually helps you move more. Oddly enough, it's kind of this go-to posture, but it facilitates movement, and movement is really key to our comfort in the workplace and health.
Do you find it's hard to sort of break people of these posture habits that they have when they're in the workplace? Because I find, it's the same thing when the whole COVID thing happened, like, don't touch your face. And then you started realizing how much you touch your face. It's the same. I imagine the posture aspect is very much like that, where all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I didn't notice I'm sitting like this most of the time. And you're not even realizing that you're just like sort of really slouched.
So what we do is we always try to help people understand the benefit of neutral posture. So neutral posture means that you're not bending, your wrist is straight, so it's not in a bent position. So, and even that, it's your back is straight, not leaning forward and slouched forward. When we try to identify and help people really see the importance of that neutral posture, then they can kind of say, oh, I've been reaching my arms, or, oh, I've been leaning forward. And then we try to help them figure out how to bring things towards them so that they're not having to reach and extend to it. But I will say that the mouse with your arm kind of slogan or tagline or whatever, it kind of falls with lift with your legs. And people know to lift with their legs, and they understand that you don't want to bend over at the waist. You want to kind of bend down with your legs, keep the load close to your body. It's less strain to the body. And people get that in mouse with your arm application after they've kind of seen what a difference it makes. A lot of times people say immediately, oh my gosh, not resting my arms on my desk feels so much better to my back. And, so when you feel the difference, it's easier to apply it and be invested in it.
Well, and I think a lot of times you don't realize how everything is connected. You hear that line, everything's connected. It really is. I've had other experiences with sinuses and stuff like that, where I'm like, everything's definitely connected to each other, So like when you're talking about your wrist, it's connected to your back. It's connected to the way you're moving when you're in that chair.
Absolutely. I have a funny story. One time somebody saw a doctor because she had wrist pain. The doctor immobilized her wrist, which they often do. So anti-inflammatories, and usually a wrist immobilizer would be a common course of treatment. So this gal, because she was reaching when she was working and she wasn't kind of applying that mouse with your arm where your elbows are by your side, she ended up putting a stapler underneath her wrist because it was more comfortable than resting that immobilized wrist down on the work surface. So can you imagine setting on a stapler, her arms reaching, and she's like, yeah, my wrist feels okay, but I'm starting to get shoulder problems. Well, and then, oh, my back's starting to hurt now too. So we, like you said, it is so connected. You really don't want to solve one problem without making sure that it doesn't expose or compromise some other element. That is a really, like, you raise the chair to get the surface below someone's elbow height, you always, for almost every woman, have to add a footrest. Because if we just raised your chair but didn't give you a footrest, your feet would be dangling, you'd have pressure underneath your knees, you would maybe impede your circulation. I mean, or you would tuck your legs underneath and all of a sudden they're starting to get tingly. So maybe we solved one problem, but we created another. So you really have to pay attention to the whole person and the whole environment. I know that it's really important.
Well, and I think it's important to say, like, it's not complaining. You're not complaining when you're like, I shouldn't have to sit at a chair where my feet can't touch the ground if I'm sitting back. That's not complaining. That's just a human right,
Exactly. And salute, if your feet aren't and you're really that concerned because your company is struggling, just at least get a box, put a box underneath your feet. I mean, there's
you make your own health decisions for you. And if you
Absolutely.
feel like you're not in a healthy position in your workplace, then maybe it's time to move on if you can't do those things.
Absolutely.
That make you feel healthy. But, yesterday we actually talked for just a minute, and I'd like to bring this up again because you mentioned something that I never really thought about, and it's the height of desks. Because, when we moved to our location that we're at in CTN on South Industrial, we all got cubicles, so everyone has the same height desk. And I'm sure that's probably normal in most workplaces, that everyone gets the same desk.
Yes, it is. It's the beauty of the sit to stand trend has been that more companies are investing in desks that are height adjustable. So yes, it's nice to stand, and that's a whole other segment that we could have a conversation about. But that has made these height adjustable desks a little more common. Now you have to remember, I entered the field 33 years ago. So I've watched even people have typewriters next to their desks and move up. Where I used to do presentations, how many people, have a computer, and half the room would raise their hand. So obviously, it's a different time. What happens when you have fixed desks and you buy a desk that is at a set height, any box store, they are designed for a man who is 6'2", period, full stop. And that's a very tall individual. But why they do that is they want to make sure that 95th percentile male can get his legs underneath that desk. And what they assume, and this is for any manufacturer, they assume that any woman who would use that desk would raise her chair high, add a footrest, or put a keyboard tray in. So those are the woman's choices. Those are her only choices with that desk. So you have to be very cautious if you have a fixed desk, meaning it doesn't go up and down, and take time to consider, based on where your relaxed elbow height is, that it's above that surface or a rate level with that surface. It's just hugely important, because if it isn't, then you will have compression against your body on the desk, whether it's because you're resting your arms on the desk and kind of leaning forward because it's so high and you can't hold your arms up, or because you are sitting too low in your chair and you're hitting the edge of the surface. So those are two very risky implications of a desk that's too high for an individual.
And honestly, I feel like if you're not in the field of ergonomics, you would never know that your desk is not the right height for you and that it is built for a tall man.
Yeah, and the best way to find that out, it's pretty simple analysis. Sit in your chair, sit back in your chair, make sure you're kind of feeling the curve of the back at your lumbar, so your buttocks is against the back. So not like the chair you were describing that you had, Dana, but you're sitting back in your chair, and then look at where your elbow is to the floor. Mine happens to be about 24 inches from the floor. And if most desks are 29.5 inches and I'm 5'7", imagine that almost every desk that's fixed for me is going to be, 4 inches too high. So it's really important to take time to look at what's most comfortable. Now I can raise my chair and I can add a footrest. So those are good solutions.
When people call you, what are some common issues that you hear? Maybe like I said, some of these people don't really know the root of their problem. And so maybe if you kind of tell people what you commonly hear, then they could maybe be like, it's my desk, it's my chair, it's the way I'm mousing.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I recently wrote a paper, and in researching it, discovered that 1 in 3 people have a musculoskeletal disorder in the United States. 1 in 3. I mean, that was shocking. And I would say whenever we do a program for a corporation and they say, just assess everybody, we want everybody to have access to this service. What we found is that it's always above 80% of people are symptomatic. They may not have reported it to their employer, but they have a symptom. And then the type of the symptom that they have, to answer your question, Dana, it really varies so greatly. It's hard to say. I mean, it's been from dry eyes to back issues to tendonitis to a carpal tunnel. It really, I mean, we've even had individuals that have hip pain. But they don't realize that they weren't letting their body relax and be at ease in their chair. So the ability to sit back and really relax into one's chair is pivotal to all other elements of being comfortable at your work. So that
I like
it's
that you mentioned that sort of I can feel it. You know how you get sort of tight at work sometimes, and you have your legs crossed when you're sitting, and you're just sort of tight all together. And you're not at home, so it's harder to feel that sort of like just feel really comfortable in my space.
And when we do an assessment, we always say, okay, take a deep breath, relax into that chair. Do you feel how supported you are? And the people are like, yeah, okay, now we have to make sure you continue to sit like that while you work. And they're like, what? How can I work in this relaxed, comfortable position? I'm used to working all tense up like this, right? You really are going to be able to help me figure that out. And it's quite fun. I mean, obviously it's what I love and I'm passionate about it. And it's just really fun to get someone to that place of being at ease and feeling better and reducing their symptoms. It's amazing how effective investing in oneself and your posture can be in reducing those symptoms.
Yeah, I also like that you mentioned investing in yourself, because this is something I was actually just talking with my own mom about, where, sometimes we take our own health for granted and we worry about our kids and our parents and our spouse and all this stuff, but we don't worry about ourselves. And we might not make that doctor's appointment for ourselves, or we might not call structured health because we don't know, we're like, it's fine, I can live with it, I don't want to complain, I'll just live with whatever's happening. But this year more than ever, I feel like it's really important to take care of yourself and your own.
Absolutely. And we're also spending more time with our computers. Now, prior to the pandemic, I threw out this statistic that we spend more time with our computers than our significant others. That was pre-pandemic. Now, this is probably just more broadly the case for everyone because we're spending time, Zoom calls, whatever we're doing, right? We're on the computer all the time. So I think it's even more important. And the other thing is people don't want to go into a healthcare provider. You want to mitigate and not expose yourself. So therefore, this investment in your own health by looking at your posture, I think is a really valuable investment to make.
Well, and you say, I know I haven't wanted to go into doctor's appointments too. I feel like I'm feeling better about it now because the vaccine and healthcare workers are safer. Of course. But you offer online assessments, right?
Yeah, we were lucky too, in the sense that we had designed that about 16 years ago. We had Siemens, a corporation that we were working with, and we would be on site with them every month. And they're like, well, we have individuals that have sales jobs that work from their home. Would you help them and make sure they are provided with the same professional service that our on-site individuals are? So when the pandemic hit, we've already been running this 15 years, this virtual service. So it's wonderful, Dana. It's really, we can do it anywhere. We've done them overseas, wherever. It doesn't matter because you're actually participating in a 1-hour phone call to help you improve the way that you're working with a report that follows up. And we always encourage participants to share that with their doctor if they're actually treating There are some cases where people can't solve all their problems through posture and they still need to seek medical advice. So we wouldn't want to take that away from someone, but so often you can relieve your discomfort by changing the posture that you work in.
All right. Well, Sarah, before we go, is there anything else, any tips or anything you'd like to add? And you know what? I'm sure we'll see you again because we need to talk more about the height of desks and standing
Oh,
desks.
it would be my pleasure. I think we have a good reference guide on our website, structuredhealth.com, that kind of gives you a walkthrough of the posture changes that you can make to be more comfortable. It's helpful to have those little guides, the 1, 2, 3, and this is how you can be more comfortable at your desk. And the last and final, I think I made the point during the interview, is really take time to invest in yourself by really thinking about how you're working and how you can improve that by not reaching, getting your elbows next to your side is really critical to that.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for filling us in on how we can be more comfortable and should be more comfortable when we work.
My pleasure, Dana. Thanks for having me.
For more on this and other programs, visit a2gov.org/CTN. Visit youtube.com/CTN Ann Arbor to see all that we have to offer. And remember to like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching and tune in next time to FYI.